Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, always fun to take a closer look at some of these movies that have really left their mark.
And talk about leaving a mark. Today we're going all the way back to 1931.
Oh yeah, you're talking about Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, the one, the only. This film is practically the granddaddy of all monster movies.
It really set the stage, didn't it, for like how we view these creatures, these beings that are created outside the natural order.
Absolutely. But before we get too deep into all that, let's
Yep.
set the scene for anyone who might not have had the pleasure of seeing it just yet.
Sure, sure. So basically, we've got this ambitious scientist, Henry Frankenstein, who's obsessed with the idea of creating life.
Yeah, and not just any life, right? He wants to conquer death itself.
Right, exactly. He's convinced he can cheat death, so he goes around digging up graves, collecting body parts.
Pretty gruesome stuff when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. But, it was the 1930s. Special effects were still in their early stages, so they had to get creative.
And let's be honest, those early special effects, they have a charm to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
A certain creepiness that you just don't get with CGI.
No, you're totally right. There's just something about those practical effects, the shadows, the flickering lights. It just gets under your skin in a different way.
Totally. So Frankenstein builds his creature from these scavenged parts, and then during a raging thunderstorm,
He brings it to life.
with the power of lightning,
Or at least that's what they suggest. They never really explain how it happens, do they?
it's kind of like this mysterious ray.
Yeah, a mysterious ray, which, leaves it up to our imagination. Is it electricity? Is it something supernatural? Who knows?
And I think that's part of the brilliance of it, right? It adds to the mystery and the horror.
Definitely. And speaking of horror, we've got to talk about the monster.
Oh, Boris Karloff, iconic. He is the monster for generations of moviegoers.
And what's interesting is that the monster, he's not just this mindless killing machine. There's a real sense of tragedy to him, almost a childlike innocence, at least at first.
You're so right. He's like a blank slate, right? Trying to understand the world, craving connection.
Exactly. And it's heartbreaking because everyone just sees him as a monster. They're terrified of him. They reject him.
And that leads to that scene with the little girl by the lake.
Oh, man, that
It
scene.
just gets me every time. He's just trying to play, right? He doesn't understand his own strength.
And she's not afraid of him. Not at first, anyway. She's drawn to him, like she would be to any other playmate.
It's such a tragic misunderstanding. And it really sets the stage for the monster's descent into, well, monstrousness.
Right. It's like that event, that rejection, that's what really pushes him over the edge.
And speaking of pushing him over the edge, can we talk about Fritz for a second?
Frankenstein's assistant.
Yeah, the hunchback guy who's always tormenting the
Oh,
monster.
Fritz, yeah. He's a piece of work, isn't he?
Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Every time the monster shows any sign of progress, Fritz is there to bully him, to scare him.
And that's such a crucial point, right? Because it highlights how cruelty breeds cruelty. The monster's first act of real violence is against Fritz.
Exactly. Which makes you question, who's the real monster here? The creature created in a lab, or the man who chooses to torment him?
It's a question that runs throughout the entire film, right? That blurring of the lines between good and evil. The monster, for all his gruesomeness, often evokes more sympathy than the humans who persecute him.
Absolutely. And then there's Dr. Frankenstein himself.
Oh yeah, Colin Clive. He does a fantastic job portraying this sort of obsessive, driven scientist.
He's almost unhinged, isn't he? Blinded by his ambition.
Yeah, and that's the danger, right? That unchecked ambition. He's so focused on proving he can create life that he doesn't stop to think about the consequences.
It's a cautionary tale,
Yeah.
right? Even back then, they were already thinking about the ethical implications of scientific progress.
And it's even more relevant today, don't you think?
Wait,
With all the advancements in genetics and artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, are we repeating the mistakes of Dr. Frankenstein? Are we creating things we can't control?
It's a question worth pondering, that's for sure.
And then we have the whole mob mentality aspect of the story, the way the villagers react to the monster.
Oh yeah, the fear, the panic. They just want to destroy him.
They don't even try to understand him. They just see him as a threat.
And it's interesting how the film uses that mob mentality to reflect the anxieties of the time.
You mean like the Great Depression, the rise of fascism in Europe?
Exactly. The monster becomes this symbol of the unknown, the uncontrollable. And the villagers' reaction is a reflection of how easily fear can turn into violence.
It's a pretty chilling commentary on human nature, isn't it?
It really is.
Okay, before we wrap things up, we have to talk about the climax. That incredible scene in the burning windmill.
Oh, man, what a visual spectacle.
The way they use the fire, the shadows, the monster trapped inside.
It's both horrifying and strangely beautiful.
And then that ending. Ambiguous. Unresolved. Did the monster die? What happened to Dr. Frankenstein?
We're left to wonder, and I think that's part of the film's lasting power, right? It stays with you long after the credits roll. It makes you think.
It makes you question. And that, I think, is the mark of a truly great film. It's not just entertainment, it's a conversation starter.
It challenges you, makes you confront your own fears, your own beliefs.
Exactly. And I think that's why Frankenstein is still so relevant today.
Mm.
It speaks to these universal themes, these fears and anxieties that we all share.
Our fear of the unknown, our responsibility for our creations, the consequences of playing God.
And it does it all with incredible style, atmosphere, and those unforgettable performances.
It's a true masterpiece of horror cinema, a film that deserves to be revisited again and again.
Absolutely. So if you haven't seen Frankenstein, do yourself a favor and check it out. And for those of you who have, I think it's time for a rewatch. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more great deep dives into the world of cinema.